When you stand next to a modern agricultural titan, like a John Deere X9 combine or a Case IH quad track, the immediate sensation is one of overwhelming physical force. You are looking at 25 tons of cold-rolled steel, rubber tires nearly 7 feet tall, and a diesel engine generating enough torque to pull a building. It screams old economy. To the average observer, this is the ultimate symbol of the industrial age: mechanical, greasy, and indestructible. But this visual dominance is a deception. If you were to strip away the iconic green or red paint and look past the hydraulic lines, you would find that these machines have more in common with a fighter jet than they do with the tractors your grandfather drove. The modern tractor is no longer just a vehicle for pulling plows. It is a mobile server room. It is a data center on wheels that just happens to harvest corn. The steel is merely the body. The soul is entirely digital. To understand why the chip war is an existential threat to agriculture, we must look under the hood. A high-end tractor today isn't controlled by gears and levers. It is orchestrated by a complex network of electronic control units, or ECUs. We are talking about over 100 interconnected microprocessors working in perfect unison. These chips are responsible for every critical function. They modulate fuel injection millisecond by millisecond for peak efficiency. They manage the continuously variable transmission, or CVT, to prevent soil compaction. They process real-time data from multispectral cameras to identify weeds and adjust herbicide spray rates on the fly. When a planter moves through a field at 10 miles per hour, placing seeds with sub-inch accuracy, it isn't the mechanics doing the heavy lifting, it is the silicon. The code running a modern agricultural fleet is often more complex than the software used in early space exploration. Without these logic chips, the mechanical components are lifeless. Here lies the great disconnect in the global supply chain, a vulnerability hidden in plain sight. We intuitively associate heavy machinery with the industrial heartlands of the West, places like Waterloo, Iowa, Mannheim, Germany, or Piracicaba, Brazil. We assume that because the steel is cast and assembled there, the machine is made there. But the brain of the machine, the advanced logic semiconductors that enable GPS guidance, autonomous turning, and yield mapping, is not born in the West. While the United States designs the chips via companies like NVIDIA or AMD, and agricultural giants write the proprietary software, the actual physical fabrication of these advanced circuits happens thousands of miles away. The supply chain for agricultural intelligence does not lead back to Detroit or Stuttgart. It leads directly to a single geologically unstable island in the East China Sea. This brings us to the most critical acronym in the modern global economy, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. While there are other chip makers globally, TSMC is unique because it holds a near monopoly on the most advanced logic chips, the highly efficient microscopic processors required for AI and advanced automation. Conservative estimates suggest that over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturing capacity is located in Taiwan. This creates a terrifying single point of failure for the global food system. If a geopolitical crisis were to blockade the Taiwan Strait, it wouldn't just delay the launch of the next iPhone, it would instantly halt the assembly lines of every major tractor manufacturer on Earth. Without that tiny piece of silicon etched in Hsinchu, a $500,000 harvester becomes nothing more than a giant paperweight, unable to start its engine, connect to satellites, or harvest a single bushel of grain. To understand the gravity of the situation, we must simulate the unthinkable. Imagine a geopolitical flashpoint in the Taiwan Strait, a naval blockade, or a quarantine imposed by Beijing. The media coverage would immediately focus on the unavailability of new iPhones, PlayStations, or laptops. But for the global economy, the real catastrophe would be much dirtier and more fundamental. We are talking about the immediate paralysis of the industrial machinery that feeds the world. Agriculture operates on a just-in-time manufacturing model. There are no massive warehouses filled with spare computer modules waiting for a rainy day. If the ships stop leaving the port of Kaohsiung, the global supply of ECUs evaporates in a matter of weeks. The impact would be swift and brutal. Within 30 to 45 days of a blockade, assembly lines for agricultural machinery in Waterloo, Iowa, Harswinkel, Germany, and Sorocaba, Brazil, would grind to a halt. You cannot ship a tractor that is 99% complete. If the guidance chip is missing, the machine cannot be sold. We would see millions of square feet of factory floor falling silent, filled with billions of dollars in unfinished inventory. But the crisis extends beyond new sales. Modern tractors require replacement modules for repairs. If a screen or a transmission controller fails during harvest season in the Midwest or Mato Grosso, and there are no replacement chips coming from Taiwan, that machine stays in the shed. We are looking at a scenario where a diplomatic dispute in Asia directly causes crops to rot in the fields of the Americas. This reveals a terrifying strategic vulnerability, the concept of a single point of failure. The global food supply chain has successfully diversified its sources of fertilizer, fuel, and seeds, but it has unknowingly bet the farm on the stability of a single island, located just 100 miles off the coast of mainland China. We have allowed the sophisticated nervous system of our food production to become concentrated in one of the most geopolitically volatile zones on Earth. The agricultural sector has traded redundancy for efficiency, and the bill for that trade-off is now coming due in the form of massive geopolitical risk. Governments are finally waking up to this existential threat. This is why we are seeing historic legislation like the U.S. CHIPS and Science Act and similar moves by the European Union. The goal is reshoring, bringing the manufacturing of these critical components back to safe soil. We are seeing massive investments, with TSMC building new fabrication plants in Arizona and Intel expanding in Ohio and Germany. The strategic objective is clear: to ensure that American and European tractors run on American and European silicon, inoculating the food supply against Asian instability. However, we must face a harsh reality check. You cannot build a semiconductor ecosystem overnight. A modern fabrication plant, or fab, is the most complex structure humans have ever built. It takes 3 to 5 years to construct, calibrate, and bring to mass production. Furthermore, the specialized packaging and testing of these chips are still heavily concentrated in Asia. Agriculture does not have 5 years to wait. If a conflict breaks out in 2025 or 2026, those factories in Arizona will still be construction sites. We are currently in a window of maximum vulnerability, where our dependence is total, but our domestic alternatives are not yet online.
We need to redefine what food security means in the 21st century. For decades, we thought it was about securing access to water, arable land, and nitrogen fertilizer. Today, food security is synonymous with silicon security. You cannot have food sovereignty if the machines that plant and harvest your calories are controlled by a supply chain you do not influence. The tractor of the future is a robot, and a robot without a processor is just a statue. This leaves us with a critical question for the industry. Should tractor giants like John Deere and AGCO start manufacturing their own legacy chips to ensure survival, or are we destined to remain hostage to the geopolitics of the East? I want to hear your take. Are we too dependent on technology? Drop your comment below. If you want to understand the hidden forces driving the price of food, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. This is Agrotech News, signing off.